What is going on, you guys? I hope you guys are having a great day, and today I'm going to be talking about the final book that I have fully read in the disturbing movie Iceberg Tier 1, which I have right behind me right here. So if you guys want to, if there's any books on here you guys are interested in reading in the near future, please, if you want, you can take a screenshot of this, and you guys will see a whole bunch of books on here that are in Tier 1 of the Iceberg, not quite disturbing, but they do have some boundaries that could be pushed. So, just so you guys know. So, the second and last book that I'll be reading, and yes, this is unfortunately the last book in this tier, because unfortunately the previous, I'm gonna put that over there. The previous stories that I did read, the 5 others that I read after this one, I unfortunately could not finish, and I will give individual little reviews after I'm done with this book. So the second book that I'm going to be reading for you guys is called Flowers for Algernon by Dano Keyes. And this one is a very interesting book, I'm not going to lie, because I remember reading a short story version of this book when I was in middle school. And when I heard that this was the novel version of it, I was instantly excited to be reading this. The basic story of Flowers for Algernon is it's about a guy who is born with a very low IQ despite being in his 30s. And he works a very low job working at a bakery, and then he's hired by a laboratory to perform a procedure on him that will slowly increase his intelligence over time until eventually he becomes smarter than the doctors who perform the surgery on him. And let's just say that his intelligence eventually deteriorates over time. Now, this is a book that I will say that I love. I love this book so much because the way that it's written and because of the story that we go on with this guy. Because I love stories that allow you into the mind of a guy who is not intelligent in the sense, and you can kind of tell when a story is written by a child, but normally like the writing will still be the same, and you're like, okay, it's obvious that an adult wrote this even though they're trying to imitate a child. And this book makes me feel like that this book is written by a guy who legit had some mental issues and was clearly different, because the first, like the opening chapters of the book, which I will show you here, you can tell that the writing is a little bit different because the way that he writes stuff is a little bit is very different. As you can read it here, you read that, you can see the way he wrote progress report, it's different. It looks like a child wrote it, which I think is actually very unique, because this truly makes me feel that a guy with suffering from, you know, some form of autism or mental disability actually wrote this. And that's what I think this story really gets right. And that's what I truly love about it. Like, he goes through a whole bunch of stuff. He eventually finds love for someone. He witnesses people who feel imitated by him because he's growing smarter by the minute, because these people that he works with at the bakery, even though they do treat him nice at times, they don't necessarily respect him, and like they make fun of him when he doesn't realize that they're making fun of him, because he's too dumb to notice, and not his fault, but he's too dumb to notice it. And then once he gets smarter and then he moves up in certain positions, they begin to realize, you know what, we don't like working with him anymore. So then he gets fired and then gets a higher job, and so he moves up in society. And that's one thing that I really love. And in case you guys are wondering what Algernon means, it's actually the name of the mouse that he runs mazes with. And eventually he's able to finish the mazes faster than the mouse can. And it's very unique. It's a very unique story. That's what I really like about it. I will say this, though. This story, I don't fully understand why it's on the iceberg to begin with, because I did not find one instance of the story disturbing in the least. Now, some people might say that the fact that someone is being used as a guinea pig for a lab might say it's disturbing, but I will say this: if you found that part of the book disturbing, I honestly don't get it, because that's not even explicit, even in the smallest sense. There's nothing bad about it. It's just a guy, like they pretty much, they just like, because this story is told through journal entries, and you don't even get like the procedure itself. All you see is the guy writing down, like, okay, surgery just finished and I don't feel anything different. And that's just really, like, it's very told mildly. And that's why I think this story could be used for kids who are in middle school or high school to read. So I don't find this book disturbing in the least. Like, even the books that were in this tier, the other books that I read, those actually had more disturbing elements than in this book. So I will say this might be the least disturbing book on the Iceberg, if you think about it. The least disturbing, because nothing about it is controversial. Some people might say the science is controversial, but I honestly don't get that. Because, yeah, I will say, the book that I read before this, Head Full of Ghosts, that was a little bit disturbing. A little bit. Not going to lie to you. Pretty disturbing. And I also will say that I truly love this story, and I would highly recommend anybody check it out. So I'm going to give Flowers for Algernon a 5 out of 5. I think it's a perfect story. I love the way that they misspell a lot of words in order to show that this guy was mentally retarded for quite a while, and then eventually, like, because as the time goes, like, the story peaks with 2/3 of the way through it, and then his mind starts to deteriorate a little bit more, and then the misspelling of words is coming back out again, and it's a very unique story. So yeah, so that's my grade for this story. And I will tell you guys, the other books that I read after this story, I won't be reviewing because I didn't finish them, and it doesn't seem fair to review a book that I don't finish, because it's like, oh, well, you didn't get far enough, you didn't get to the good stuff. And I'm like, okay, well, it wouldn't make sense to review it. So I read another book on the Iceberg called Helter Skelter, which is basically the true story of the Manson murders. And I read 100 pages of that before bailing out, because it just took too long to get where it was going. And I get that it's a detail for little detail recounting of everything that happened, from the investigation to the murders themselves to how they knew Charles Manson was the killer. But to be honest, I give a story 100 pages, depending on how long it is, to get interesting. And if it doesn't do that for me, then it loses me. I'm sorry, but it does. So therefore, Helter Skelter wasn't quite the book for me, but I would still recommend it to anybody, because it might be interesting to you, especially if you like true crime. True crime just isn't my thing. Another book I read after that was called Pen Pal, which was self-published by the author of that. And it's about a young boy in kindergarten who, I guess, witnessed some stuff. I don't know. All I know is that each chapter focused on a specific thing. Like, one focused on balloons, another one focused on boxes, which was basically a cat that he had. And to me, it felt like the story wasn't really going anywhere, and I just got bored with it. So about 2/3 of the way through the story, I just was like, you know what? I'm done. I can't read this anymore. After that, I read a story called Push, which I'm sure you guys have heard of. It's a story about a teenage girl who basically becomes impregnated by her dad. Yeah, that's literally the story. And I didn't finish that book, not because it was controversial in that sense. It's because you can tell this is being narrated by a very southern African American, and the southern language and the way they wrote it out was a little bit too much for me to grasp. Because instead of saying mother, she would say mother with MUVA, and I was like, okay, like, now if that happens a couple of times in a story, I can take it. But when it's literally all the time, like, I got 35 pages in before I was like, you know what, I can't do it. It's too much for me. I'm sorry. And then I read another story. I'm trying to remember exactly what it was, but the last book overall that I read in Tier 1 of the Iceberg was called The Lovely Bones. And if you've heard of the movie that came out back in 2013, you know that's a story about a girl who was killed and abused by a killer, and she gets sent to heaven, and then she realizes that heaven is not all it's cracked up to be, and she basically witnesses Earth and stuff that happens. Very, like, she witnesses everything that happens. Like, she witnesses her dad actually talking to this guy and not realizing that he was the man who took his own daughter away from him. And you see the killer, trying to cover up his own tracks, and you see her friends spread rumors about her. And to be honest, the story was just a little bit too long, and I just could not get fully invested in it. Not because of the controversial stuff. And I will say, I've read a couple of books in tier. I'm on the second book in tier 2 right now, so I just finished one that I'll be reviewing for you guys pretty soon. So guys, thank you so much for being patient with me in these videos, because I have not been sticking with doing my YouTube videos for very long, because I've been, catching up with some other stuff. But I do have more videos for you guys pretty soon. So guys, thank you guys very much for watching. Thank you for help me finish up the first tier of the Iceberg, and I want to give a special thank you to Reddit user kTheButcherShitter for creating this Iceberg, and being like the main inspiration for making this video, because I will say that I actually am really impressed with how the first tier went. And I will say, even though these books weren't technically disturbing for me in the sense, I still enjoy the 2 books that I was able to finish for the most part. So guys, look forward to more videos very soon. Look forward to me reviewing tier 2 of the Iceberg, and trust me, this is gonna get it's gonna get a little bit more intense from here on out, because I've already read I read one of the books already on here, and let me tell you, it goes a little bit further. So guys, thank you very much for watching, and I will have some movie reviews up for you guys hopefully pretty soon, because there was a lot of movies that came out so far this year that I did not get a chance to review, but I've seen, like Barbarian, for example. Loved it. I did see Don't Worry Darling, which I may or may not review, because I'm not too sure about that film yet. But anyways, thank you very much, as always, for watching, you guys, and I'll see you guys next time.